Hey up VC, word to your mothers. Midge here, a guy in a yellow hat that likes to talk about yellow records. And in a nutshell, that's what this video is all about today. So this is a thread response to Cam over at the Vinyl Narrative. And he's celebrating his first year in the vinyl community of making videos, which is a great achievement. And if you're not aware of Cam, he makes great videos. He's a great guy, comes across really well. He's really enthusiastic, and it really comes across in his presentation. He got a really broad taste in music, and he loves his audiophile vinyl. And you know, I've learnt a lot from watching his channel, because it's not the sort of thing I'm really into, but I've learnt a lot from him. So you know, things about mobile fidelity issues and one steps and two steps and yeah, things like that I wasn't aware of before. So if you're not aware of his channel, hop on over. He's a great guy and he's got a great channel. So that's Cam at the Vinyl Narrative. And he has asked us to pick out 5 albums from our collections that have primarily yellow colours. And when he first mentioned this, I thought, I don't think I've got any with yellow covers. And when I started looking through my collection, I had loads, so I had to really narrow it down. So I've just picked out 5 at random. There's no real connection between the artists or the albums other than they've got yellow covers. So without further ado, the first one I picked out was a favourite artist of mine. This is his second album from 1967. And this is Tim Buckley's Goodbye and Hello. So there you go, primarily yellow cover. And he's got a Pepsi-Cola bottle cap in his eye for some reason. Maybe he opened it too fast. You know, the story's never really been told about that. The back cover's actually blue, but yeah, let's ignore that. But yeah, second album from 1967. I love Tim Buckley as an artist. He's sort of the sort of artist that never made the same album twice. And also, the more albums he made, the stranger his material got, which is another great plus for me as well. So like I said, this is his second album, and it's a big jump from the first album. It sort of continues in that folky singer-songwriter acoustic guitar based sound, but this time around the songs are a lot stronger, and there's some great psychedelic touches to the arrangements. He co-wrote a lot of the songs with his friend Larry Beckett, who was a poet. So a lot of the lyrics are sort of like very sort of poetical and psychedelic and just plain odd at times, which also adds to the sound of the album. And this is such a great album. There's so many great songs on this album. You've got things like No Man Can Find the War, Pleasant Street, I Never Asked to Be Your Mountain. You've got Phantasmagoria in 2, and one of my all-time favourite Tim Buckley songs, Morning Glory, which has got such a beautiful arrangement and melody to it, and some of the bizarrest lyrics you'll ever hear. It's just strange, but it's such a great song. And you know, Tim Buckley's voice, it's got such a range. It's like, you know, it's quite deep and baritone 1 minute, and then it's sort of like falsetto and soaring the next. And yeah, it's a bit of a drifting album, this, in a really good way. It's really psychedelic. It's really all over the place. And it's just a great yellow covered second album from Tim Buckley. So that's Goodbye and Hello. Caramac likes it too. So the next yellow album I've picked is one of my favourite psychedelic albums, and it's from 1969, and it's the first album by Andwella's Dream, Love and Poetry, originally issued on the CBS label. I had a bootleg copy of this for years, and then Sunbeam reissued it in 2009, I think, as a 2 LP set. So I grabbed a copy of that to upgrade it. And if you've never heard it, it's a 3-piece band from Ireland. You've got Dave Lewis, who's a primary songwriter on guitar, piano, organ and vocals. You've got Nigel Smith on bass and Gordon Barton on drums. And this is a superb album. It's sort of like drifty, dreamy, psychedelic pop with sort of some hard rock touches to it. It was released in 1969, so they sort of missed the boat in a way. I think, you know, psychedelia was on the wane by then, and it was only a short-lived movement, but I think they missed the boat a little bit. But the songs on here are amazing. Dave Lewis was such a great songwriter. He's got a great voice, and he's got like a knack of writing great psychedelic pop rock songs with really catchy choruses. So many of the songs on here are great. You've got like the whimsical "The Days Grew Longer for Love." You've got the jazz-inflected "Lost a Number, Found a King," which features Bob Downs on flute and all sorts of jazz instruments. So some of the tracks are have sort of like jazz inflections to them, but it really adds to the sound. You've got "Man Without a Name." You've got the sort of like psychedelic freak out "Cocaine," which finishes side one, which sort of like has a sort of, again, sort of like a jazz fused breakdown in the middle of it. You've got "Shades of Grey," "High on a Mountain," "Take My Road." Oh, just every song on here is a banger. It really is. If you like psychedelic albums like Billy Nichols' "Would You Believe" and the Zombies' "Odyssey and Oracle," and albums that have sort of like, that are primarily like psych rock but really catchy with it, and songs that stay in your head and you end up singing along to them. Like I say, I think he's a great songwriter, Dave Lewis, and he went on to make two other albums after this. I think they shortened the name to Andwella. I've got the second album, but I've never managed to track down a copy of the third, and they became a bit more, standard rock based then. And Dave Lewis went on to write songs for other people. He had a really big hit with "My Island in the Sun" for Demis Roussos, which was a big hit. And I think he lives in Spain now, and he still performs. So on this issue, on the second side, you've got some stray A and B sides from Andrology with the album that accompanied the album at the time, but also you've got some albums from 2008, songs that he'd just written that they've added on to this, and this is a great reissue of the album, 2 LP set with a lot of liner notes from Dave Lewis himself telling the story, and I think basically it was just a case of, they recorded an album for CBS. CBS didn't back them. There was no promotion, and it just sort of faded away. There was no interviews, no Top of the Pops appearances or anything like that. So they just gradually faded away, and the album just disappeared without trace. But they did make two other albums on reflection that were good as well. But again, on a small label, they couldn't really generate any sort of publicity or sort of interest or buzz around the albums, and they just sort of faded away. But this is a great album, a great psychedelic album, really underrated. It's still available now. I think the Numero label reissued it. I think they reissued all three of their albums as a box set about 5 years ago, but you can still get hold of a copy of this as a single LP on Numero, I think. So it's still out there. And if you've never heard it and you love psych and you love psych pop, psych rock, do check it out. It's a superb album, really underrated. So that's Andrella's Dreams, Yellow, Love and Poetry from 1969. So for my third choice, I've gone for something a little bit different. Again, another favourite of mine, and this is by the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, and this is their third album, Tadpoles, from 1969. Great sleeve. As you can see, it's a die cut, so you can see Neil Innes there, thinking about music. You've got Vivian Stanshall there, completely thinking about loads of weird stuff. And Legs Larry Smith there, just rolling his eyes around. So, always love that die cut cover. This is a reissue on Edsel. I've got most of my Bonzo Dog albums are originals, but I've never seen an original copy of this anywhere. It's bizarre. It must be quite hard to find, I think. But anyway, this is their third album, and it's sort of like a compilation album of sorts, really. So, as you may or may not know, the Bonzo Dog Band had a spot on the popular kids' TV show of the time, Do Not Adjust Your Set, and they did like musical numbers and their sort of own zany brand of lunacy for the kids' TV show. It's also famous for like having a pre-Monty Python lineup of Terry Jones, Michael Palin, Eric Idle, and David Jason appeared as a lineup as well. And like I say, it was meant to be a kids' TV show, but I think a lot of adults ended up loving it as well. You can still watch episodes on YouTube. I think there's only half of the episodes still in the archive that they made, But it's a great watch if you want to see some pre-Python. You can see the, you know, how they became to be Monty Python, the surreal and zany humours there. And like I said, the Bonzo Dog Band did a lot of comedy numbers on the show, and they were from sort of like their influences. So they were sort of like comedy jazz songs from the 30s and even the 50s. So a lot of the songs on here are covers of songs that influenced them, and you can, when you listen to them, you can imagine them being perfect for kids, even though they put their sort of psychedelic, strange, bizarre twist on all the songs. So it starts with Hunting Tigers Out in India, which is a great song. You've got their version of the Monster Mash on here. Ali Baba's Camel, a love song with a camel, and some great songs of their own, some originals of their own. So you've got Neil Innes' I'm the Urban Spaceman on here, famously produced by Paul McCartney under the pseudonym Apollo C. Vermouth. And you've got the great Mr. Apollo, which is sort of like a pastiche of Mr. Universe type adverts that were prominent at the time. And also the classic Vivian Stanshall song Canyons of Your Mind, which is sort of like a surreal psychedelic parody of love songs. I think the story goes that he was inspired by the song Windmills of Your Mind because he hated it, because he just said it just sounded really pretentious. So this is his sort of like piss take of Windmills of Your Mind, with suitable psychedelic imagery and daft phrases, and it also has a fantastically off-key and off-kilter guitar solo from Neil Innes halfway through it. But yeah, this is a great album. As you can see, bright yellow cover. That's the inside. I think it's the same on both sides. And like I said, this is a reissue on Edsel. But I love the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. Really funny. Neil Innes is one of my musical heroes, and Vivian Stanshall was a true one-off in all senses of the word. So that's my yellow album from the Bonzo Dog Band, and that's Tadpoles. So my fourth yellow choice is an album that doesn't really get talked about very much anymore, and it's from 1967, and it's by the band Piccadilly Line, and this is The Huge World of Emily Small, and that's a great psychedelic 60s cover, isn't it? Look, that's brilliant. I love that cover. And basically, the Piccadilly Line was like a one and done band, although they did go on to form another band after this, which I'll go into in a bit. And basically, they were made up of two guys, Rod Edwards and Roger Hand. Roger Hand's such a great name, isn't it? It sounds quite spooky in a way, but yeah, Roger Hand, great name. And basically, this is like an album, 60s album, very influenced by Simon and Garfunkel and the sort of folk rock movement. They played sort of like breezy, folky, psyche edge pop songs, basically. Loads of harmonies. There's covers of the Everly Brothers on here and Bob Dylan, so you can see where they're coming from, what their influences were. And like I say, it's really catchy, really breezy. A few sort of like subtle psych edges, but nothing too psychedelic. There's a lot of emphasis put on the harmonies and the vocals and the you know, the sort of the catchiness of the songs. There's lots of hooks there. Largely acoustic, although there's quite a few orchestral arrangements. It's produced by John Cameron and Roy Guest. John Cameron, obviously a bit of a jazz guy, composer and arranger, and he went on to make the soundtracks for Psychomania and Kes, and he also was a big player in the sort of the library scene of the 60s and 70s. He made a lot of library music and incidental music for KPM and other labels like that. And yeah, it's sort of like nothing too startling. It is very much of its time. The songs are very catchy. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it is enjoyable. And Rod and Roger, after this album, went on to form a duo called Edward's Hand, which is obviously after their last names. and the first album, which I also have, is produced by George Martin, and they went on to become more like a singer-songwriter, more of the sort of like a rock type duo, nothing too heavy, but quite melodic. And they made a couple of albums in the 70s under that name, and then sort of disappeared, although I think they did do production work and songwriter work. But as a Piccadilly line, they only made this one album. But like I say, it's quite breezy, it's quite gentle. It's well worth seeking out and having listened to, though. It's a nice mixture of songs, and like I said, there's a Bob Dylan cover on here, Visions of Johanna, and Gone Gone Gone, a cover of the Everly Brothers song. But the other songs are like, it's their own original material, and it's just as good. Sort of psychedelic songs like At the Third Stroke, Can You See Me, Your Dog Won't Bark. Like I say, Simon and Garfunkel type harmony-led sort of folk pop, but well worth seeking out. This is a reissue on the Lightning Tree label. I think it was like a site reissue label in the 90s. Or early 2000s. I don't think it was around for very long, but they did some decent reissues as well. So and a lovely yellow cover to boot. And that's the Piccadilly line, The Huge World of Emily Small. So for my last yellow choice, I've gone for something a bit strange, a bit off kilter, and something a bit X-rated, to be honest. And it's an artist called Blowfly, and this is his 1974 yellow album called Blowfly on Tour. Yeah, so basically, Blowfly was it was like a comedy creation of Clarence Reid, who was a soul producer and singer-songwriter. He worked with a lot of soul legends. He worked with Sam and Dave. I think he wrote Clean Up Woman for Betty Wright. And as a producer and arranger in the studio, he used to sing along to popular soul songs of the day, but change the lyrics to make them sound sexually crude lyrics and things like that, and rude and funny. And his session musicians and the people in the studio thought they were really funny, so I think they encouraged him to sort of make some comedy albums along that line. Bizarre. It's on the label Weird World, which tells you everything you need to know. So these were basically underground albums at the time. So they were known as party albums because I think they used to put them on at parties, and people used to laugh along. And Rudy Ray Moore as Dolomite made them, and Richard Pryor, Moms Mabley. I'm trying to think of some of the other names. They'll come to me. But there's a lot of sort of like explicit comedy albums in the 70s along the same line. So basically, Clarence Reid used to dress up in this outlandish superhero costume as Blowfly and sing basically very sexually crude versions of popular soul songs. So on this album, you've got things like a very explicit version of Shaft. You've got By the Time I Get to Phoenix, which becomes By the Time I Get to the Clinic. And, it's about sexually transmitted diseases and things like that. You've got Spanish Harlem, which becomes There Is a Hoe in Spanish Harlem. Stevie Wonder's If You Really Love Me, You Would beep me. And you've got Mercy Mercy Me becomes Syphilis Syphilis Me. So it's sort of like 12-year-old sexual humour. It's not particularly funny, to be honest, but they are curio albums. I think he made about 25 of these with different themes, but they all basically focus around the same setup. So there'd be like a crude rap that he would do, that he would repeat during the songs. They sound like they were cut live in the studio. So you had some really cool backing band arrangements. They were really top-notch musicians, and he'd sort of like rap to the listener, and then all of a sudden he'd break out into one of these songs. So and they didn't particularly last very long either. The humour didn't extend to him parodying a whole song. He would just find something quite funny about changing some of the lyrics to a famous soul song for a couple of lines, and then he'd do his rap and move on to another one. So you've got like about 20, 25 tracks of him basically being as crude as possible over soul standards of the day. And you'd have, in between, he'd talk about women in quite a derogatory way. He'd say words like and and all the sort of words I can't repeat here. And yeah, sexually crude, occasionally funny, I suppose, but great curios. And like I say, he made loads of these albums. The backing band was superb, and he could sing. So, but this, it's just bizarre, and bizarre in a sort of way that I quite like. But it's not sophisticated humour, put it that way. But as the cover says, for mature adults only, rated XXX, and it's available on 8-track. I'm not sure if it still is, but yeah. Blowfly on Tour from 1974. And that's my yellow albums for Cam. So I hope you like that, Cam. And like I say, if you haven't checked out his channel, check it out. I'll leave the link below. And he's got a great channel. So hop on and have a look. And congratulations, Cam, on your 1 year in the VC. Really enjoy your channel. And all the best.